Chapter 128. The Lightning Flame, 1. Sir Eugene, are you not going to wake up, Sir Eugene? Mare shook him. I'm up, Eugene answered as he sprang up from the bed. He wasn't someone who usually slept for very long. It was a different thing if he was camping, but when he slept in a familiar place where some level of safety was guaranteed, then he would always wake up before daybreak. He actually woke up on his own even if no one woke him. However, someone had started to wake him up a few days ago, even though Eugene didn't ask for it. Did you sleep well? Mare was standing beside his bed when Eugene turned his head, rubbing his dry eyes. After throwing a glance at the long wall clock, Eugene came down from his bed and said, I told you don't need to wake me up. Why do you wake me up? I can't help it. I can't even sleep, so I'm so bored at dawn. You lived like that for hundreds of years. You must have gotten used to it. I earned my freedom with difficulty after living like that for so long, so I don't want to waste a minute or even a second of my life. Mare sheepishly smiled as she followed Eugene. Mare had stopped wearing her trademark robe and witch hat. Instead, she was wearing clothes that an ordinary 10-year-old girl would normally wear. However, the clothes themselves weren't ordinary in the slightest. They were very expensive. Not that Eugene cared, since he was not the one who had purchased them. Still, I like it here more than in Akron. There are a lot of beings to talk to while you sleep. Mare trotted behind Eugene and chattered. Listening to her cheerful voice, Eugene stood in front of the mirror. With his hand, Eugene roughly combed his disheveled hair backward and gestured to Mare, give me some space. Okay. Mare didn't go far, she just leaned her forehead against the wall nearby. Meanwhile, Eugene unbuttoned his pajamas and opened the wardrobe. The wardrobe was wide, but the only clothes inside were similar-looking martial arts suits. Other kinds of clothes were in a separate dressing room. Eugene just grabbed one of the martial arts suits and put it on, then kicked the pajama on the floor into a basket near the door. Are you done? Mare asked. Yeah. On the day when Eugene first brought Mare out, he had just changed his clothes without paying her any mind. Mare's face had turned scarlet as she shrieked. After that, Eugene had to go through this troublesome process every time he changed his clothes. This applied not only in the Red Tower but also in the main house and the annex of Lionheart. Have you slept well, Master Eugene? Nina and the servants were standing outside the door. When Eugene absent-mindedly nodded, Nina lowered her head and met Mare's eyes. Mare beamed when Nina winked. Lady Ancilla suggested having breakfast with her in the main house, Nina said. We ate together yesterday's dinner, lunch and breakfast. It isn't wrong for a family to sit at the same table. She is being too obvious about this. Eugene chuckled dryly as he shook his head. It had been a week since he had returned to the main house with Mare. At first he had been worried. When he had come back with 100 elves, Ancilla crushed her fan. She allowed the elves to live in the forest in the end. However, adding more members to the main house without any notice meant that Eugene was directly challenging the authority of Ancilla, the second mistress. It had been only a couple of days since his first transgression, but Eugene did yet another one. He had honestly expected some criticism. And yet, Lady Ancilla is a good person. Mare smiled as she walked down the corridor with Eugene. She was the one who gave me these clothes. It wasn't just the clothes she was wearing right now. Ancilla had turned an empty room in the annex into a dressing room. It had only taken her a day to fill the entire wardrobe with Mare's clothes. She asked me to visit the main house whenever I am bored during your training, Sir Eugene. You already know about the main house's library, right? Of course, there are no magic texts and Akron is a better library. Still, there are many interesting books that you can't find in Akron, Mare excitedly explained. Eugene hadn't heard the slightest bit of criticism. Instead, Ancilla had welcomed Mare. She too had heard about Aroth in the Lionheart's main house. Although the opponent had some restrictions, Eugene had nevertheless won the fight against a proud tower master of Aroth. That victory wasn't just for Eugene to enjoy. The more achievements Eugene had, the higher Lionheart's status became. With that victory alone, Ancilla could suppress her annoyance about the elves. What was the big deal of adding a very small cute girl? Ancilla wasn't the first wife, but despite that she wished to make one of her children the patriarch. That was why Cyan and Seal had received strict education from a very early age. They had started mastering mana and practicing with weapons right after they had started to walk. Ancilla never regretted her parenting strategies. She went a bit overboard sometimes to the extent of using physical punishment, but she believed that her every action was for her children's future. It wasn't like she only used the stick. After the stick, she always gave her children the sweet gifts they desired. However, she sometimes thought that she wanted to stop being strict for a moment and just spend time with her children as a family. At those moments, she wished she didn't have to physically punish her children for their faults and instead embrace and comfort them with her love. She felt that the most whenever she saw her daughter, Seal. She had been cute and adorable ever since she was a baby. And Scylla wanted to dress her up in clothes that suited her cuteness and give her dolls and toys instead of a sword. She hoped that she could do some shopping with her daughter and brag about her at a social party. I could never do that with Seal, Ancilla thought. Before Seal was her daughter and a girl, she was a Lionheart. She preferred a sword over dolls in the first place, and she liked to attend swordsmanship training rather than shopping or social parties. Ancilla was proud of Seal. She was proud of her daughter for training hard every day for future glory. That was so much better than the empty-brained nobles who chortled as they gossiped and trash-talked others. MeowNovel.com is updating your favorite novel. Still, even just once. She never said those things out loud. If Seal had wished to go shopping or to social parties, Ancilla would have allowed it. But her daughter was tougher than Ancilla had hoped her to be. I really didn't think that she would have decided what to do with her future that quickly and go to the Black Lion Castle, even before we could attend the Capital Nobles' social party in dresses together. Can't you go faster? The morning sun was coming up. Early spring morning was just as cold as the winter. Ancilla wrapped herself in a thick fur coat as she looked out the window. We are going as fast as we can, said Hazard. As the 2nd Division captain of the White Lion Knights, he was chosen to be Ancilla's entourage in this early morning. He knew how sensitive the second mistress was. You must like Lady Mare very much, huh? It had been already 20 years since he began to serve the main house. He had been so loyal that it wouldn't be so weird for him to joke around like this. Of course, that sensitive second wife never took the joke. Originally, Ancilla would snap, saying, "Don't say such nonsense." "She is cute," Ancilla quietly answered. Ancilla was head over heels for Mare, who looked like a 10-year-old girl, maybe because her children had both left the main house. Mare was like the essence of Ancilla's unfulfilled fantasy. Mare politely said thank you when Ancilla gave her sweets, and she nibbled on them with a lovely face. When someone gave her a cake, she smiled so adorably that the hearts of people nearby ached. Unlike Seal, who hated fluffy skirts, Mare was happy with whatever clothes she received. Does she have to stay in the annex? Master Eugene brought her, and Lady Mare wants to stay in the annex. It recently came to my mind that the annex is too far from the main house. The building is pretty old since it was built a long time ago. Doesn't it require some repairs? Of course, if the annex was renovated, then the people in the annex would have to stay in the main house. Ancilla continued. No, repairments wouldn't be enough. I think it's better to just demolish it and build a new one right beside the main house. If she did so, then she wouldn't have to ride on a carriage to the annex in the early morning. The people in the annex wouldn't have to visit the main house for their every meal. We are here, said Hazard. The carriage stopped and Ancilla patiently waited. The door should be opened by a person outside. Impatiently opening it herself was the far opposite of the dignity that Ancilla pursued. Opening the door took only a few seconds. She had never felt annoyed about it or thought it took too long, but this time... Have I not slept very well? Why do I feel like Hazard is terribly slow today? You can read this novel at MeowNovel.com for better experience. The door soon opened. It was because Hazard felt Ancilla's annoyance, so he quickly got down from the carriage and escorted Ancilla. As she got down, she could feel the cold air. Oh my! Ancilla trembled as she tightly grabbed onto her coat. She is too cute. In the training area of the annex, Mare was standing in her soft outer garment. On the other hand, Eugene was topless as he was sitting in front of Mare. He didn't seem to mind the cold weather. What is he doing right now? Ancilla dumbfoundedly asked. He is meditating, Hazard calmly answered. I can see that. I am asking, why is he meditating outside in this cold weather without any clothes? Ancilla also came from a prestigious warrior family. Therefore, she had learned several martial arts since she was a child. Still, she didn't really understand why he would do such a thing in this cold weather. If he wants to do it, he should do it alone. How could he do such a thing with a young child? Ancilla clenched her fists, trembling in anger. Lady Ancilla. When Ancilla and Hazard got closer, Mare beamed as she waved her hand. The sight. Ancilla grabbed onto her heart without realizing it. The memory of Seal and Cyan calling her mommy for the first time came to her mind. What brings you here this early in the morning? Ancilla controlled her expression right away. Mare's face was pale as she looked up, but Ancilla knew that it wasn't due to the coldness. She also knew that the adorable girl wasn't a human, but a familiar that had lived for hundreds of years. Therefore Mare never felt cold. However, those things about Mare aroused Ancilla's maternal love. So what if she didn't feel the cold? The only thing that mattered right now was that the wind Ancilla could feel was cold. Clearing her throat, she wrapped the highest quality scarf around Mare's neck and said, I came here to talk about how to greet Eugene's important guest, since she is visiting today. She isn't really an important guest. Eugene opened his eyes. It's not worth your attention, Lady Ancilla. Besides, she is just a guest I invited personally. Your guest is the Lionheart family's guest. Ancilla glared at Eugene. Meanwhile, her two hands were busy wrapping the scarf around Mare's cheeks and ears. And how could she not be an important guest? I can't agree with that. Isn't she Aratha's White Tower master? Melkith Al-Haya's letter from Arath had arrived last night. She wrote that she would visit the Lionheart's main house today, since she was now ready. Well, she is, but she is visiting for personal reasons. So if you could open the warp gate, Eugene trailed off. I can't do that. As the second mistress of the Lionheart family, it is my duty to greet the guests. Ancilla had no intention of backing down regarding this matter. The relationship with a celebrity like a Tower Master was something that couldn't be bought. Of course, there was the Red Tower Master Lovelian. She often met him, since he was Gilead's acquaintance and he had visited the Lionheart house every year after he had participated in the bloodline continuation ceremony. Now, besides the Red Tower Master, she was also going to meet the White Tower Master. Even if the meeting was started by her foster son, Eugene, the meeting could turn into the beginning of a relationship with the Lionhearts depending on how she handled this meeting. The White Tower Master, Melkith Al-Haya. She is the only woman among the 5 Tower Masters. Wait, how old is she? Ancilla got lost in thought for a moment. If her memory served her correctly, Melkith was already over 60. But I heard that she is still beautiful. The Red Tower Master, Lovelian, was actually also a grandpa, but he looked like he was in his 20s. I do take care of myself, but it's nothing compared to magic. I won't have a problem for at least a decade, but after that I may have to use magic. Lady Ancilla? Mare's voice brought Ancilla back to reality. Surprised, she looked down at Mare tightly wrapped in the scarf. Mare's big eyes were sparkling. Ancilla almost hugged her. Marveling at her own patience, she stood up. It looks like you are done with your morning training. Let's have breakfast in the main house. My father is still in bed, Eugene answered. There is no need to forcefully wake him up. Sir Gerhard would prefer sleeping till noon to having breakfast at this hour. Well, that's true. Eugene nodded. Ancilla's breakfast was always simple. A balanced meal mainly consisting of vegetables and a cup of coffee with no sugar. That would be her breakfast if she was eating alone, but Mare and Eugene were joining her today. The breakfast became so excessive that it was hard to call it breakfast. Meat, and meat. Meat dishes including pork, beef and chicken were lined up on the table like a parade. Eugene had meat for virtually every meal. It was the same for Mare too. Aside from sweet and fluffy desserts, Mare liked everything as long as it was tasty. Although the smell of these dishes was enough to upset Ancilla's stomach, and she actually didn't have any of them, she pleasantly watched Mare eating. I have to recruit more cooks, Ancilla thought. There were already plenty of cooks in the main house though. Moreover, all of them were experts who could be called the best in the Keel Empire. Cooks in the Keel won't be enough. Hasn't Mare eaten nothing for hundreds of years? I'm going to feed her so many dishes that will make up for her time. Ancilla made a promise to herself. Melkith arrived a little after noon. Hi. After she walked out from the warp gate, she joyfully waved her hand in a frivolous greeting. She was wearing a coat that almost covered her ankles, and the coat was so fluffy that it doubled Melkith's size. Ancilla had imagined a serious Tower Master, but Melkith was nothing like that. Welcome to the Lionheart house. Ancilla didn't lose her precious dignity, although she was perplexed. Lifting her leopard-patterned sunglasses up, Melkith stared at Ancilla. And who are you? I am the second wife of the patriarch Ancilla Lionheart. Aha. You didn't have to come out and greet me like this, I heard a lot about you from the Red Tower Master. Melkith approached Ancilla, grinning. I am visiting the prestigious Lionheart main house. Wouldn't it be rude to come empty-handed? So I brought a gift that I think would suit you, Lady Ancilla. A gift? You didn't need to do that. Come on, don't refuse. I think you will really like it when you find out what my gift is. Leaning forward a little, Melkith whispered something to Ancilla, whose expression slightly changed in the next moment. Clearing her throat, Ancilla nodded. What gift have you brought? Eugene asked as he stared at Ancilla, who was returning with the knights. A bottle of rejuvenating potion, Melkith answered. Pardon? Aside from the spirit summoning magic, the White Tower also deals with alchemy. I am not really an expert in alchemy, but I have Aratha's best alchemists as subordinates. Melkith crossed her arm, bragging. Actually, it's not really a rejuvenating potion. It's more of a skincare thing. Still, do you know how expensive that is? We only deliver it to Aratha's royal family. Their interest coincided. Just as Ancilla wished for a relationship with the White Tower Master, Melkith also wanted a relationship with the Lionheart family. I grilled my alchemist to bring you this gift today. What on earth is that? Eugene asked as he tilted his head, but Melkith didn't answer. He just grinned. What's the rush? You will see soon enough. To be honest, I do want to show you right now. She lifted her head and took a look around the Lionheart's forest. First, let me take you to the annex. Eugene offered. The annex? Are you seriously asking a spirit summoner to leave this forest for a boring annex? Ridiculous, Melkith murmured as she trembled. The forest was so green that it was hard to believe the weather was cold today. Mana was so abundant in the forest. As a grand spirit summoner, Melkith could feel how ridiculous this forest was. I have never seen a forest with this many spirits, Melkith quietly spoke as she lowered herself to the ground. Not only did she contract the Lightning Spirit King, but also the Earth Spirit King. Therefore she could feel how many spirits were living in this land. Can I live here? No, you can't, Eugene answered without any hesitation. Chapter 129, The Lightning Flame, 2. Melkith's admiration continued throughout the entire walk. The forest had lush vegetation, something unbelievable considering the weather. Spirits, including primal ones, were everywhere in this forest. This forest is heaven for a spirit summoner. Melkith excitedly yelled. I am really not exaggerating, you should believe me. I went to dozens, hundreds of places that are known to have many spirits while I learned spirit summoning magic all these dozens of years. But I have never seen such a lively place, much less one with more spirits than this forest. Ah, sure, Eugene absent-mindedly answered. In this forest, even the most minimal spirit affinity is enough to create a contract with a spirit. If you already have a contract, the level of your spirit summoning magic would increase by just living here. Oh no. Not only the spirit summoning magic. What's up with this place? How could this place have so much mana? Melkith was so thrilled that she threw her hands in the air. Then she suddenly pounced at Eugene and grabbed his collar. Why are you doing this to me? Eugene asked. This is a crime. Melkith raised an outcry. It's a crime for a mere clan to own this spot full of mana and spirit. The Lionhearts are not really a mere clan, Eugene answered with a reluctant face. Hey, even the Magic Kingdom of Arath does not have this kind of mana site. I'm pretty sure that applies to every other country on the continent. I assume Helmuth has one. It is possible. Anyhow, this place isn't an ordinary mana spot. Even in Helmuth there isn't a better spirit assume. But they probably have plenty of darkness spirit gathering spots. Melkith was flustered, unable to finish her sentence. Still, she was able to reach a conclusion soon. I really can't live here. Tiske, I already said no. Then forget about living. How about visiting twice a week? No, you can't. You're being so cheap. Technically, this forest isn't even yours. Lady Ancilla seems to like my gift very much. I can just negotiate with her, can't I? Eugene didn't answer Melkith but just stared glumly at her. Truthfully, there wasn't any reason for him to unconditionally say no. However, Melkith's eccentricity, which Eugene had heard about from Tempest, troubled his mind. What if Melkith ran around here naked in the middle of the night just like she had done with W and Whitey? Eugene really didn't want to imagine it. You cheap bastard, you don't have to glare at me like that. I'm not going to pester you anymore since you are being really cheap. Actually, I have everything. Do you know that? I'm already at a peak as a spirit summoner. That's awesome, Eugene nonchalantly answered. Malkuth gritted her teeth as she glared at Eugene. Then she quickly turned away from Eugene and started walking down the forest. Come to think of it, where's Mare? She's here. When Eugene lifted the cloak as he answered, Mare stuck her head out. For a moment, Malkuth felt mixed emotions as she saw Mare. Her treasure, the Cloak of Darkness, was being used as that little girl's house. I never imagined the cloak would be used like that. You are really making good use of it, Malkuth said bitterly. Don't worry, I will be returning it to you in one piece after 6 years. Of course you should. If the cloak has a single scratch, this entire forest will. I'm joking. You are really something. How could you have no respect for the elders? You are glaring as if you are going to kill me every time I say something. This big sister is so scared of you. You a big sister? Be quiet, snapped Malkuth. No matter how hard she thought, it was all because the Green Tower Master, that son of a bitch, caused a scene. Of course, Malkuth hadn't wanted the Green Tower Master to win the fight. However, she was certain Eugene had no respect for the Tower Masters because of the Green Tower Master's inelegant act. But where are you heading right now? Eugene questioned. The place full of spirits and mana. I think that applies to the whole forest. There is a particularly dense spot in this forest. You don't need to guide me. I'm already sensing it. Malkuth thought this was a good opportunity. She grinned and dramatically turned to make her coattails fly. As she did so, the ground beneath her rose like a sea wave. These spirits of the earth are guiding me. Eugene looked up to Malkuth with a reluctant face. Waiting for Eugene's admiration, she was still spreading out both her arms as she stood on the earth wave. Shall we go? Eugene asked after a pause. Do you want to ride it too? No. You don't need to refuse. Riding this is quite fun. When Malkuth flicked her finger, the ground beneath Eugene wriggled. It was actually pretty surprising. The earth was being moved by the spirits, not magic. Well, she did make a contract with the Earth Spirit King, Eugene thought. He stopped walking and stood still. Malkuth was still not getting down from the wave. Like that, they moved forward, standing on the moving ground. In the meantime, Mare also wriggled out from the cloak and stood beside Eugene. Have you ever surfed before? Malkuth asked. No. You can always ask me if you feel like it. We don't even need to go to the ocean. I will create a wave for you. That's a bit too much. Why? Did this big sister make your heart race? Please don't say such a gross thing, Eugene answered with a disgusted face. However, Mare didn't look displeased. Maybe because she liked what Malkuth said. Or maybe she was having fun riding the earth wave. Oh. After crossing the forest, they arrived at the elven village, which had just been completed. It was probably the supply delivery day too. Carriages were lining up before the village entrance. Master Eugene, what brought you here? Standing in front of the carriage, Nerissa and Lavera were checking the supplies being unloaded. Your preferences are very unique and shocking. Malkuth stuttered, looking at Nerissa and Lavera. The two elves were wearing the Lionheart's-made uniforms. One had a prosthetic leg and another was wearing an eye patch. It wasn't rare to use elves as servants, but both of these elves had damaged or missing body parts. It made Malkuth imagine something very dark and decadent. Don't get any weird ideas. I'm a person who tries to understand every person's preference. There's no need to be shy. You already know a lot about my embarrassing secrets. Don't say something that will cause a misunderstanding either. Nerissa and Lavera, who politely bowed before, were now staring at Eugene's group. They were currently apprentice maids of the annex, and they had become Nina's subordinates while Eugene was gone. The nonsense babbled by Malkuth would reach Nina, and from there it would reach his father, Gerhard. So is this the place with a lot of spirits and mana? Eugene asked. Seriously, stop thinking weird shit. Fine. You really shouldn't be so shy. Malkuth cleared her throat and raised her finger. That's the place. Her finger was pointing at the back of the elven village. It was where Eugene had planted the saplings of the world tree. It had barely been weeks, but the saplings had become much taller than when he got them from Samar. Aren't those the fairy trees you've brought from Samar? Asked Malkuth. Yes. Even I have never seen a live fairy tree. Can I get one sturdy branch as a gift? It depends on you, Lady Malkuth, Eugene grumbled as he approached the fairy tree. As Malkuth followed him, she saw a hut not far from the fairy tree. The hut is the center of this forest, thought Malkuth. It was the ley line of the Lionheart clan. Is the root of the fairy tree connected to the ley line? That's why the ley line's power amplified, so the mana. Wait a minute. The spirits in this place, why are they somewhat different? She was familiar with primal spirits who didn't have egos, but the primal spirits in this forest were a little different from the other spirits. Am I mistaken? Malkuth murmured. Mistaken about what? The primal spirits in this place, they are somewhat differ. Oh my god. Is this the world tree, not the fairy tree? Malkuth shrieked and flung herself toward the sapling. Then she wrapped her limbs around the trunk like a cicada. I never thought I would see the world tree in this life. Technically, it's not the world tree. It's a branch of the tree. Oh my god, oh my god. How did you know? Levin and Janos told me. How is this possible? For a mere mortal clan to have 3 world trees in their forest. Who in the world are Levin and Janos? The Lightning Spirit King and the Earth Spirit King. Are you going to stay there? Eugene asked. After a while, Malkuth slid down the tree. You aren't going to give me one even if I ask for it, right? Never. I'm so sad. I can't even pester you anymore. I kind of grasp the current situation. Be thankful for the humanity left inside me. The elves were brought from Samar, where Sienna was known to be secluded. The world tree was here probably for the elves and because of Sienna's wish. Malkuth looked up at the young world tree with eyes full of lingering feelings. If only I could do as I please. I want to have one in the White Tower. However, she couldn't. Malkuth sighed heavily and collapsed against the tree. Come here. Are you going to negotiate with me or something? Eugene asked. No, I'm not. I'm trying to start the contract between you and the spirit. I came here today for that, right? Malkuth opened her coat wide and took out a big box from it, placing it in front of Eugene. After that, she moved her hands here and there, light radiating from the tip of her fingers. She used the light to inscribe a formula and draw a magic circle in the ground. Eugene sat in front of Malkuth and watched the whole process. Do I need to sit too? Mare asked, but Malkuth firmly shook her head. No, you stay outside. Somewhere far away from here. Your delicate control formula might interfere with what's about to happen. Is it dangerous? Mare nervously asked again. The mood is important when you're making a contract with the spirits. The lightning spirits especially have a nasty temper. If a random familiar stays in for no reason, the spirits might strike you with lightning or something, Malkuth explained. She scanned Eugene up and down. Do you want to take off your clothes? Do I have to take off my clothes while I contract spirits? Eugene asked reluctantly. I prefer that method. When I approach them in a primal state without any unnecessary decorations, my connection with the spirits strengthens. Tempest told me that's a superstition. Every spirit has different preferences. Anyhow, my advice is to take off your clothes. I recommend at least taking off your top. It might burn away during the signing of the contract. Eugene frowned, but he didn't ignore her advice. That's a fine body you got there, little brother. Malkuth whistled as she looked at Eugene, who came back after taking off his top. He looked at her with disgusted eyes before plopping down onto the ground in front of her. Just open up the box. I'm really curious if it's worth all the fuss. Hee. With a wicked smile, Malkuth flicked her finger toward the box, which opened. Eugene opened his eyes wide as he looked inside the box. Something that was crouching inside jumped up with a flash. What's this? Pee. Inside the barrier made by Malkuth, lightning went on a rampage. It was so fast that Eugene had a hard time following its movement, even leaving afterimages as it bumped against the barrier and flew erratically. Every time the lightning sparked, Eugene's naked upper body stung. A lightning flame. Malkuth adoringly watched the lightning flame running wild. There is a magic material called lightning ore, which holds lightning. It's a very valuable gemstone that is normally used to make artifacts. However, a high-level spirit summoner can process the lightning ore to hold a lightning spirit. Malkuth snapped her fingers. The rampaging lightning flame flinched, then dropped to the floor of the box. This lightning ore has been processed using alchemy. It was a piece of ore, but it has been refined into a flame, not a refined ore. Is that supposed to mean something? The gemstone is a stone after all. No matter how it's refined, the stone can never become bigger than its original size. We carve and crush a stone, making it smaller in the end. But how about a flame? Grinning, Melkith continued to explain as she pushed her head in Eugene's direction. Flame can change in any way really depending on how it's controlled. Water requires a bowl to be held, but flame doesn't even need a bowl. It grows bigger, it shrinks, and it's violent at the same time. In other words, a flame is a very belligerent and also a very convenient material. Aha, Eugene quietly chimed in. Of course, this is not an ordinary flame. It burns like a flame, but the ore is actually hosting a primal spirit of lightning. Therefore, it doesn't have any ego, just aggressiveness. What do you think? Isn't this material charming? It is, but your reaction is so boring. Do you know what I went through to make this? Tons of lightning ore were used to make this flame. I changed that ore into flames and personally summoned the Lightning King to literally pour high-power lightning into these pieces. Eugene stared at the lightning flame with narrowed eyes. The lightning flame curled up on the bottom of the box was only as big as a bonfire, but he felt the immense mana concentrated inside. Don't worry about compatibility, Melkith spoke as she shook her head. There is a reason why I made it to look like a flame. It's because your mana looks like a flame while you use the Lionheart's white flame formula. It might seem like it doesn't mean much, but it's actually pretty important. It's like adding color to the clothes you are wearing. In a nutshell, I'm making it appear more familiar. Since you lack spirit affinity, how do I proceed with the contract? Hold the lightning flame. In front of Eugene, Melkith opened her hands, then clenched them into fists. Make it answer to your mana, using the white flame formula. The trick is, make it answer to your mana, your power, and your existence. Change the shape of the lightning flame like that. Then the lightning flame will naturally resist the outside mana. Are you telling me to make it surrender? As a summoner, I think it's better to call it harmonize rather than surrender. But that's up to you. Wouldn't it be better for you to try it yourself? Melkith had a point. Eugene nodded and reached out for the lightning flame. Look at this bastard, Eugene thought. When his hand got closer, the lightning flame flinched and then increased its size as if it was going to swallow Eugene's hand whole. He smirked and used the white flame formula. Whoosh! The white flame twirled around Eugene's body. Soon the flame was dyed a cerulean hue. Eugene grabbed the lightning flame with a flame-wrapped hand. Pzzz. The lightning sparked. Eugene's arms ached and his teeth chattered. In spite of Eugene's will, his two arms trembled like aspen leaves, and they became hot as if they were burning. However, Eugene didn't let the lightning flame go. He tightened the grip around the flame instead as he brought it closer to his body. Wouldn't it be better if you treat it more gently? You said it's up to me whether I make it surrender or harmonize. Eugene smiled as his cheeks twitched. It resisted harder than he had thought. It was pretty interesting. Pzzz. As Eugene pressured it, the lightning flame began to shrink. You're right. So, if you continue, you will be able to feel the spirit attracted by the lightning flame. There is no way it's a low-class spirit. You should be able to contract with an intermediate-class spirit at the very least, Melkith explained. Though I think he won't be able to contract a high-class spirit, she thought. Actually, the class of spirit didn't matter. When a summoner contracted any spirit, their spirit affinity increased afterward depending on how they treated the spirit. Even if Eugene only contracted a low-class lightning spirit right now, he could always get a higher-class lightning spirit afterward. Or Levin. How about if you help him out a little? You can call a high-class spirit from the start. A contract should be fair. The lightning spirit king Levin answered in Melkith's head. I didn't like that lightning flame thing in the first place. I only conceded because you stubbornly insisted on it, Melkith. Since you've been accommodating him this much, he should at least proceed with the contract on his own. You are cheap, Melkith grumbled. If you wanted him to get a high-class spirit, why didn't you just make an artifact that could hold a spirit? That's not a contract, that would be using the spirit in the weapon. That was why WNYD was a ridiculous treasure. The sword didn't just host spirits, it enabled the owner to make a contract with the Wind Spirit King himself. The look on Eugene's face changed as he controlled the lightning flame. It was because Eugene felt a disparate presence within the lightning spewed by the lightning flame. There was no way that Melkith, who had an overwhelmingly sensitive lightning affinity, could have missed the presence. Melkith beamed and said, "A spirit is answering. Low class." "No, it's an intermediate class." "I knew it." "Dana." Concentrate on the spirit to start the con. That's too weak, isn't it? Eugene answered as he frowned. The power of the spirit he could feel right now was weaker than the lightning flame, and it was incomparable to the bolts of lightning he could shoot using the thunderbolt bow. Don't be too greedy now. Let's first begin with the con. Let's go on with this a little bit more, Eugene interrupted. He wasn't fully controlling it yet, but his confidence wasn't groundless. Eugene's mana control was so exceptionally good that even Sienna admitted it. The lightning spirit that answered him from inside the lightning flame was a primal spirit. And a primal spirit was another form of mana. Eugene couldn't sense primal spirits normally, but this time, a primal spirit was captured using this processed ore. It was more than possible for him to sense and control it as he did with mana. As the white flame formula circulated, his cores spun faster. Explosions blasted the inside of Eugene's body, amplifying his mana. The flame wrapped around his body turned a perfect cerulean. PZZZ. As Eugene proceeded with controlling the flame, the blue flame and the lightning mixed up. The flame sparked up and the mana scattered away. Using the white flame formula, Eugene drew both of them inside his body, letting them flow inside his core with no waste of energy. Malkuth was unable to say anything, so she just watched the scene unfolding before her eyes. Is it even okay to do that? I don't know. Let alone trying to do something like that herself. Malkuth had never even thought that it was possible. Besides, that wasn't why she had created the lightning flame in the first place. Hey, are you all right? Doesn't it hurt? Eugene didn't answer. Gritting his teeth, he just glared at the lightning flame. The light blocked his view. As he proceeded to suppress it, the lightning flame became smaller and smaller. Conversely, every time the white flame formula made his mana explode, the lightning flame swelled up. Malkuth. Levin watched Eugene through Malkuth's eyes. Who is that guy? I don't know. How is it possible to control primal spirits like that? Levin's shock was understandable. A primal spirit was pure essence. It was weaker than low-class spirits, but it didn't lose itself even before high-class spirits' power. Every spirit in this world had once been a primal spirit, and that also applied to the spirit kings. Malkuth. I don't know, so stop calling me. I'm not trying to ask you anything, we just got sidetracked. What? The barrier is collapsing. Surprised, Malkuth raised her head up. It was just like Levin said. The barrier which she had cast to prevent the lightning flame from running wild was now cracking because it wasn't able to withstand the power moving around this place. I thought it was something serious. I just have to make another one, don't I? No, let it be for a moment. The moment Malkuth tried to recast the magic, Levin stopped her. Why? Look at the cracks. Levin's voice shook. Unable to understand his trembling voice, Malkuth stared at the cracks. It didn't take long for her eyes to open wide in shock. The World Tree's spirits are responding to the lightning. Lightning seeped in through the cracks. It merged of its own volition into the lightning flame and was driven inside Eugene's body by the white flame formula. What the? Malkuth stutteringly spoke. Rumble. The lightning exploded. Chapter 130. The Lightning Flame 3. The spirit's lightning didn't intimidate Malkuth, but it was an indication of an impending burst. Still, Malkuth didn't scream despite the fact that she got entangled in the explosion. However, she was shocked. She knew how this explosion had occurred. The World Tree's spirits who were wandering about had entered through the barrier's cracks and turned into lightning. Due to the sudden increase in energy, the lightning flame had burst, unable to withstand the power. Is this even possible? Malkuth wondered. Recovering her posture ruined by the explosion, Malkuth brushed the electricity off of her as if she was brushing off dust. It's impossible. It wasn't Levin who answered. It was Janos, the silent earth spirit king. It was really rare for him to speak, but he answered Malkuth this time. Spirits can't change their nature. Primal spirits existed in the wind, fire, earth and so on. They didn't have an ego. They were just another form of mana. However, primal spirits couldn't really be used as mana. Primal spirits of earth were, in the end, just earth spirits. Malkuth was also well aware of it. The basics of spirit summoning magic was to understand the nature of spirits. Even though they couldn't be seen by ordinary people, they surely existed. A wind spirit could never become an earth spirit. An earth spirit could never become a flame spirit. A A flame spirit could never become a water spirit. The world tree's spirits, Melkith muttered. She turned back with a stiff expression. The young world trees didn't have a single scratch, despite the sudden explosion. She could sense the world tree's spirits dancing around the branches. Trees also held spirits. However, spirit summoners didn't really like them, because tree spirits had too many restrictions compared to other spirits. If the summoner called upon them in a forest, tree spirits were undeniably strong, but when they weren't in a place with trees, they weren't all that useful. Even the world tree was nothing else but a giant tree in the end. However, those spirits were quite different from tree spirits. Melkith dryly laughed and looked forward. Eugene was sitting still just like before, but the lightning flame was no longer visible in his hand. Instead, the lightning had blended into the flames of the white flame formula that Eugene was circulating. It wasn't ordinary lightning. It was spirit lightning. No, the world tree's spirit turned into lightning. There was no dissension between the lighting and the mana flame. It harmonized with the mana as if it had been a part of it in the first place. The scattering embers conducted lightning. It's not a lightning spirit. Levin began to speak with difficulty. I don't know what that lightning is. Even I can't interfere with it. Then what in the world is that? It's hard to believe, but that boy created a new spirit with his own power. Eugene was also surprised. The explosion had surprised him, and the fact that the lightning flame had disappeared also surprised him. He was again surprised to find that the world tree's spirits had turned into lightning. Unbelievable. Eugene was already shocked. As for Tempest, he couldn't even stop yelling. Hamel, I never thought that this would be possible. You created a miracle that no spirit summoner or spirit king ever could produce. Eugene didn't bother to answer Tempest. Instead, he was analyzing the change inside himself. It didn't really disappear. He looked down at his empty hands. The lightning flame is completely blended into my mana. The thing you were squishing around was simply a lump of primal spirit. However, the world tree's spirits answered your call and became new spirits. I know, so be quiet. Taking a deep breath, Eugene manipulated his mana. PZZZ. The more violent the flame became, the stronger the lightning became. Was the lightning flame that much of a special material? No, that wasn't it. The change had started after the world tree's spirits had joined the equation. He stood up from the ground. Then he tried to sense the mana around him and the world tree's spirits. But the wandering spirits didn't turn into lightning anymore. Or else was it because I'm special? The fact he had reincarnated was enough to make him feel special. As far as Eugene knew, no one else in this world had succeeded in reincarnating, other than himself. Maybe they are keeping their mouths shut after they reincarnated. He wasn't just special because he had reincarnated, he had also been special in his past life. Although he had been together with talented companions at the time, Eugene was nonetheless the stupid Hamel who had killed 3 demon kings. Mana mastery, the lightning flame, and the world tree's spirits. No, that wasn't enough. The eternal whole. It was the power that had made the lightning flame surrender. The red flame formula. Tempest babbled on and on, saying that this was a miracle. However, this was an inevitable result, not a miracle. All these factors had interlinked to create this result. After reaching a conclusion, Eugene turned to Melkith and asked, Lady Melkith, I have a favor to ask of you. What? Create another lightning flame for me. Melkith knew why he was asking for another. He wanted to test his hypothesis one more time. I can do that, but, Melkith mumbled, but Eugene didn't hear the end of her sentence. He flew up and reached the tree branches that spread out energetically. Interestingly, he could now see which branches could be cut with no damage to the trees. I can see now. He couldn't see them before, but the world tree's spirits were visible to his eyes now. They looked like an opaque haze. There were some branches that the spirits didn't hover around. In other words, it was okay to cut those branches. Eugene cut one thick branch and came down. Watching him, Melkith unconsciously swallowed hard. Although Tower Masters had high authority, even a normal fairy tree branch was very hard to get. Moreover, that branch was not just from an ordinary fairy tree, it was the world tree's branch. This material was as valuable as a dragon's heart. In return, I will give you this. Eugene spoke as if he was doing her a big favor. Regardless, Melkith reached out her hands and received the world tree's branch. He. Unable to hold in her excitement, Malkuth laughed so hard that her shoulders shook. She was already using a fairy tree branch staff, but it was a refurbished one, while this piece was big enough to make a new one perfect for her. I will make you one. Yes, of course. I will make you one. I will return to Aroth tomorrow first thing. Malkuth excitedly spoke. Right now. Lady Ancilla told me she was going to prepare a party. Give it back to me if you don't want to. When did I say no? I actually don't like parties. Parties? There aren't many wizards who like parties. Yes, I am also a wizard. I like researching alone in a quiet place rather than going to noisy parties. Her voice was bright but her face was crumpled. She was lying through her teeth. Malkuth was crazy about parties, but she didn't want to give up on the World Tree branch in her hand right now. In the end, Malkuth returned to the Lionheart family's warp gate, holding the World Tree's branch in her arms as if it were her precious baby. She only returned to the Lionheart house 10 days later. From the start, lighting ore was a rare material, and she had used up all the ore the White Tower had while making the first lightning flame. Therefore, Malkuth had even searched the Bolero Street's black market and emptied her personal wallet, not the White Tower's, to buy a massive amount of lightning ore. Then she had begged and given gifts to her subordinate alchemists, who had already pulled all-nighters to make the first lightning flame, to convince them to remake the flame. It's bigger than the last one, Malkuth said. He was telling the truth. The new lightning flame looked indeed bigger than the one before. Eugene and Malkuth walked through the same course. The main house, the forest, the elven village and the 3 world trees. Just like he had done 10 days ago, Eugene sat before the box and grabbed the lightning with his hands. The conditions were also the same. Malkuth cast a barrier and Eugene controlled the lightning flame using the white flame formula. Some time passed as Eugene moved the lighting flame around. It's not working. It seems like it, Eugene said, putting down the lightning flame without any lingering feelings. There had been reactions while he was interacting with the lightning flame. His flame-like mana had condensed the lightning flame, then made it expand. However, unlike before, Eugene's mana hadn't merged with the lightning flame, and no World Tree spirits had been attracted by it either. Why don't you look disappointed? I kind of saw it coming. Smacking his lips, Eugene touched the lightning flame with his finger. The change only happened once. That was how the lightning flame became my power. That's all, Eugene nonchalantly spoke. This change that happened to you. I, the Grand Spirit Summoner Malkuth Al-Haya, and the 2 Spirit Kings I have contracts with, can guarantee that there is no precedent in the history of spirit summoning. Tempest told me the same thing too. Flick. As Eugene flicked his finger, the lightning flame got pushed away. When it did, the lightning flame shuddered and went back into the box where it originally was. I did a lot of tests these past 10 days. Eugene stood up from his seat and dusted off his pants. A new kind of spirit was created inside me and its attribute is lightning. However, it's not a lightning spirit. They walked through the woods. Will the spirits get bigger little by little? Or will more World Tree spirits turn into these new spirits? I was curious. Therefore, I lived in this forest for 10 days and sensed the spirits nonstop, but the World Tree spirits didn't turn into new spirits anymore. Squinting his eyes, Eugene looked at the trees in the forest. The World Tree spirits were flying between the trees as if they were teasing Eugene. I feel like they want to annoy me. Annoy you? The spirits? Malkuth dumbfoundedly asked. Yes, they are gesturing for me to come, but they don't come to me when I get close. But they don't really run away either. They are definitely close by, but I can't touch them. The spirits don't really have physical bodies, you know? In any case, those damn bastards don't answer any of my requests. Chuckling, Eugene raised his finger. Lightning shot forth from the tip of his finger. Malkuth dropped her jaw and turned to the direction in which Eugene had shot the lightning. The electricity was still flowing in the scorched land. Unbelievable, Malkuth murmured, calming down her shock. The lightning spirit. No, your mana itself is holding the lightning. Do you know what that means? It means it's entirely different from spirit summoning magic or normal magic. It's also different from martial arts. Mana is just mana. In order to transform it into anything, it first needs to be changed into magic using a spell or martial technique. The primal spirits didn't have egos. This also applied to the World Tree spirits. They were primal spirits that happened to live in the World Tree, that was all. Primal spirits are the essence of all spirits and another form of mana. They exist everywhere as long as spirits exist, but it doesn't lose itself even in front of the higher-class spirits. Melkith swallowed hard. The reason why she had made the lightning flame was to help Eugene make a contract with the lightning spirit himself. He had failed to sign a contract, but he didn't need to anymore. The lightning was flowing in his body now. There wasn't really any need to contact the spirits anymore. Although the lightning is mixed with your mana, its attribute didn't change. Shall I be honest? I want to pin you down and dissect you right this second. I'm certain that any spirit summoner would want to do the same. No, every single wizard in this world would think the same. Please leave it to your imagination. Don't try it. I'm curious. Feeling a thrill traveling down her spine, Melkith's eyes sparkled. What can you do with that unique power of yours? I have been conducting some experiments. These 10 days Eugene had tried many things. No New World tree spirits were attracted by the lightning in his body. This hadn't changed after he used the second lightning flame. This lightning was now completely blended with his mana. It wasn't depletable anymore. Just as mana recharged after a while, the lightning also recharged. Every time Eugene made progress in the white flame formula, his lightning would also get stronger. In other words, his mana and his lightning were one and the same in a sense. Whether his mana was imbued with the spirits of lightning or otherwise, it didn't make much of a difference to Eugene. In any case, his mana was now buzzing and gave him a tingling feeling. Just as he could shoot out mana, he was now able to shoot out lightning. He could even imbue his blazing sword force with the lightning attribute. The lightning amplified his power, and this also applied to the white flame formula itself. His white flame formula was grafted onto the eternal whole. He spun his cores in a circle, blasted them apart, remade the pieces into countless smaller cores, and made those tiny cores spin and explode once more. Now lighting was added to the explosion, making it stronger and the mana flow more violent. It taxed Eugene's body just like when he used ignition, but his cores didn't overload. I'm not really used to it yet. Eugene inhaled and exhaled deeply. He continued to breathe like that for a while. Melkith was filled with excitement as she watched Eugene. Soon she realized that Eugene's face stiffened as he breathed. It wasn't just his face, his whole body was tense. Melkith had never properly learned martial arts, but she knew what this meant. Is he nervous? Melkith thought. It was strange. She had witnessed the battle between Eugene and the Green Tower Master, and she had been with Eugene before the fight had taken place. As they were riding to the Green Tower Plaza, Melkith and Mare had been worried about Eugene, thinking of the upcoming battle. However, there hadn't been the slightest hint of nervousness on Eugene's face. Even in the carriage he had been relaxed. He hadn't been scared in the slightest at the perspective of fighting against an archwizard at the 8th circle. He had been the same when he had left the carriage and indeed when the battle started as well. He had just moved naturally and won the fight. Hey, you are not mistaking something, are you? Melkith cautiously asked. I did ask what you can do with that power, but that doesn't mean that I want to fight you, you know? Melkith thought, is that kid going to pounce at me? Did he misunderstand me? He's young, that is possible. However, Eugene didn't answer Melkith's question. He just glared forward as he frowned. The reason for his nervousness was simple. I don't want to embarrass myself, Eugene thought. Of course he had no intention to fight Melkith. This nervousness was solely due to himself, due to psychological reasons. After taking several deep breaths, Eugene operated the white flame formula. When he put one foot forward, electricity sparked. Boom. Seeing what just happened before her eyes, Melkith's jaw dropped. Like lightning. Yes, the thing just now was like lightning. Oh, not like. Eugene really had become lightning just now. That was the only possible description given how he was fast and explosively powerful. The problem was that even Eugene couldn't perfectly control the ridiculous velocity. Are you okay? Melkith stutteringly asked as she approached Eugene. He had sprung forth, becoming a bolt of lightning, and came to a halt after he crashed into some trees. The way he had stopped wasn't really neat. The furrows behind his dragging feet were clearly visible. His posture was also unstable. Eugene cleared his throat. That was why he had been nervous. As a person who had all the memories from his past life, Eugene was unbearably embarrassed with himself for failing to control his power and getting dragged away by his power. Whoa. Can you hear me? Are you all right? Of course. I'm all right. Doesn't even hurt, you know. You have seen it too, White Tower Master. Eugene spoke at a fast pace. Yes, I have seen. You were really fast. You were like a lightning man. He wasn't injured. Well, of course he wasn't. He had sprung forth with an aura shield all over his body. It was just that his feelings were hurt. My speed is slower than when I use ignition. Ignition not only overloaded the core but it also overloaded the body. That was why he could properly control its power. However, this lightning only caused mana to explode faster. Eugene's mana control was nothing short of spectacular, but it was still hard to put the brakes on himself. It was easy to amplify the power of an attack by mixing some lightning into it. On the other hand, it wasn't easy to move around as he circulated this fierce mana through his entire body. Stroking her chin, Melkith was buried in thoughts. Since it's not ordinary mana, why don't you just use it for magic and stop mixing it in when you use martial arts? That would feel like I'm wasting it. Magic was charming. The more he studied, the more things he could achieve that were impossible if he just used martial arts. However, that didn't mean Eugene was going to give up on martial arts. Besides, it's not that easy to use it for magic. Eugene tousled his hair. The nature of mana changed so. This is unprecedented, so I can't give you any advice. Well, then I have no choice. I have to get used to Lightning Flash. Lightning Flash. Eugene just blurted it out, but Melkith didn't miss it and asked, "Did you name it?" So, what you have just used was the Lightning Flash of the White Flame formula. Is it something along this line? Eugene didn't answer. Or is it the Lightning Flash formula? The Lightning Flash White Flame formula? The Lightning Flash Flame formula? The White Flame Lightning Flash formula. Melkith kept teasing Eugene. Be quiet. Isn't your face a bit red? Are you embarrassed about naming your skills? Hey, there's nothing to worry about, you know? It's a person's right to name the skill they made, Melkith proudly said. Every wizard has such dilemmas. They created this really cool magic, but they have a hard time coming up with a cool name for the magic. And the name is a tricky thing. The name might look cool to the person who named it, but it might sound embarrassing and lousy to everyone else, right? The corners of Melkith's lips perked up. Eugene remained silent. But it feels like the creator is belittling his own skill to use an ordinary name. If the name is too fancy, then it's embarrassing to tell it to another. I know it very well. Didn't I tell you? Every wizard has those dilemmas, okay? Okay, so I think the name Lightning Flash is fine. No, it's actually a bit too normal. How about Fire Thunder? Or Thunder Fire? Do they sound tacky? Firebolt. Thunder Flame. Magic. Eugene shouted. Melkith snickered as she turned to Eugene. What magic? I will show you magic, Eugene answered. He frowned as he lifted his cloak to take out Akasha. However, it wasn't just Akasha that came out from the cloak. Eugene stared at Mare, who was hugging Akasha while desperately holding in her laughter. Looking at the sniggering child, he felt as if Sienna was smirking at him. He rapped Mare's head without realizing it. Why are you hitting me? Mare bristled up. Your smile was annoying. I think the name Lightning Flash is really cool. When I heard that simple and intuitive name, I can feel that your naming skill has really improved. Mare soon spoke with a sly smile on her face. Naming skill? Melkith repeated Mare's words. With vengeful wrath, Mare continued, isn't it a much better name compared to names like Azura Rampage, Poltergeist Aegis, Dead End, Thousand Thunderclaps and Lightning Counter? What kind of idiot comes up with such embarrassing names? Well, at least Thousand Thunderclaps and Lightning Counter sound pretty okay. They sound like lightning. Melkith chimed in to tease Eugene. Shut up, please. Eugene clenched his teeth. Calming his irritation, he held Akasha up while shoving Mare, who was still hanging onto Akasha, back into the cloak. Go inside. Sir Eugene, how about Lightning Azura? Mare mockingly asked. Shut up. Eugene no longer wanted to have a conversation regarding this topic. After freeing himself from all ideas and thoughts, he settled down to concentrate and recall a formula. The formula was then converted into a spell. The crackling lightning flame twirled around Eugene's body, descending upon the ground. At the same time, Eugene's body floated up into the sky. Lighting covered the ground below him, merrily dancing around. Melkith stammered. She had lost count of the number of times she got surprised today. As her face turned pale, she shook her head. Monster. It wasn't exactly the same, but it was enough for Melkith to recognize what Eugene was doing. She knew what spell Eugene was casting. This particular piece of magic had been created by the Green Tower Master Generic Osman while he was trying to create a signature spell for himself. The Divine Tree. Did he copy it by just looking at it? It was not remotely on the same level as copying the magic patterns engraved on a cake. Since Eugene had never seen the Divine Tree formula, it was impossible for him to randomly mimic it. While he's scratching the surface, Divine Tree was technically a 6-circle spell, but the level of difficulty was actually too high for 6-circle wizards to try it. The only reason why he could cast it was that he understood the magic through Akasha and was assisted by Mare. That magic. You better not use that, Malkith murmured, shaking her head. If the Green Tower Master finds out you learned the Divine Tree without his permission, he will kill you no matter what, reputation and dignity be damned. Of course he would try. Scattering the formula away, Eugene snorted. I just used it once for you to see anyway. I'm not planning on using this kind of crappy magic. Thanks to the Divine Tree, Eugene could shut Malkith up. Crappy magic. Malkith dryly laughed and shook her head again. Chapter 131. The Lightning Flame 4. A month had passed. A letter arrived from the Holy Empire. The letter was from Rohanna Celis, Christina's childhood friend from the monastery. The letter didn't say much. She said she was having a quiet and peaceful life after she had spent months wandering around Samar. After skimming down the letter, Eugene grabbed Akasha. I guess she hasn't forgotten how to use it, Eugene said. The letters were scribbled in such a way that they actually formed a magic formula. Any given group of wizards tended to know at least 1 or 2 encoding spells, which also applied to the Red Tower. Lovelian had taught Eugene about the Red Tower's enciphering magic, and Eugene had taught Christina in turn. Even in the Red Tower, the only people who could use this enciphering magic were Lovelian's right-hand people, including Hera. Christina didn't distrust Rohanna Celis. However, there was always that if. She had also mentioned how her letters might be monitored. That was why Eugene had taught her the enciphering magic. At first glance it looked simple. It was actually simple for that matter. However, the magic formula was weaved with various traps everywhere. However, the traps were simply meant to record that someone tried to snoop, and did not show any visible changes whatsoever. That was why only the letter's recipient could see the trap and find out that it had been triggered. Following the decoding formula, Eugene infused the mana and deciphered the code. The words in the letter were immediately replaced by completely different ones. Christina was not able to interrogate the Pope and the Cardinal herself. Taking the bulls by the horn to see their reaction was too risky. If they were the ones behind the ambush, of course, they would be alert against Christina returning alive. Therefore she was keeping an eye on them. Yeah. If she presses them hard about the ambush, the Pope and the Cardinal will pull their ranks and take action. The very saint of the Holy Empire had been attacked by the demon folk of Helmuth. Although the ambush had ended in failure, that would not prevent the relationship between the Holy Empire and Helmuth from deteriorating. It was inevitable. The Demon King of Incarceration is officially a pacifist, Eugene pondered. No one could deny that. There was an organization called the Anti-Demon Alliance. It was an international organization made by a group of small countries in the north, led by the Holy Empire. For a long time, it had been deploying armies near Helmuth's border, staging an armed protest. Although it didn't launch direct attacks on the frontier towns, it blocked trade routes and held regular military exercises near the gates of Helmuth castles. Even though the Demon King of Incarceration had the power to wipe them out, the king was overlooking the organization's activities. Naturally, the demon folk could not directly collide with the organization, even though they made complaints. The demon folk tried to kill the Holy Empire's saint. Helmuth couldn't hush this kind of thing up by blaming everything on the demon folk who attacked Christina. If this got publicized, it was surely going to become the spark to start the war. However, it was too soon for a war. Right now, she can only say she will look further into it, Eugene thought, putting Christina's letter aside. He had actually received one more letter. This other letter wasn't from the Holy Empire. It was from a Roth, written by Lovelian. The letter contained information about Ryzakia and Barung. The Dragon Demon Castle was the Black Dragon Ryzakia's residence. The castle was unique even in Helmuth in that it resided in the sky, not on the ground. The flying castle, dozens of times bigger than the famous floating station of Aroth, was overflying Ryzakia's land. Ryzakia loathed humans. Helmuth welcomed humans, but there wasn't a single human living on Raizakia's estate. Only demon folk, demonic beasts and demi-humans lived on the dragon's land. Population meant military strength, so although the land itself was vast, the troops of Raizakia were overwhelmingly weak compared to the other dukes. Moreover, humans naturalized to Helmuth generally weren't strong enough to be used as soldiers, but they regularly paid taxes. That money was used to increase the demon folk's power. Yet the human hater Raizakia refused to even receive that tax money. Indeed, among the numerous demon folk, dragons were special and Raizakia was the most arrogant dragon of all. Scanning the long letter, Eugene frowned. It's not Raizakia, he reached a conclusion. There was a race that made up an especially great portion of the population in Raizakia's estate, a fair bit higher compared to any other land of Helmuth. Dwarves. Dragons usually went nuts over jewels and handiworks. Since they considered themselves the greatest of races, they believed that it was only right to own things that suited their elegance. That was why dragons had been ruling over dwarves for a long time, and it was the same for Raizakia. Even before he had fallen, many dwarves had worked for him. Then he had flown to Helmuth with all his dwarves without either liberating or massacring them when he had fallen. 300 years had passed since then, and the descendants of those dwarves were still not free from Raizakia. There was a big mine on Raizakia's estate. The dwarves weren't able to leave the mine. They worked in the mine for their entire lives. Everything they mined, hammered, and crafted went into Raizakia's treasure house. The products made by the dwarves are being siphoned off. Dwarf products were not officially exported. However, through dozens of brokers, such products were actually released in secret. Dragons never sold their stuff. Then was somebody siphoning off goods after pulling the wool over Raizakia? No, that was impossible. In Raizakia's estate, there were several high-ranking demon folk who served the dragon. Although Eugene didn't know the exact clauses of their contracts, he was certain that it wasn't possible to plot against Raizakia. Dwarves would also never do that. The current problem alone was enough to doubt it was Raizakia, and he had some circumstantial pieces of evidence as well. Over the last 200 years, Raizakia hadn't made any new contracts with other demon folk. There were only 3 dukes in Helmuth. Among them, Morgiabella, the queen of the night demons, already had powerful armies, so she didn't need to make new contracts. As for Gavid Lindman's title, the Incarceration's Blade, that was more like an honorary title. He had been the demon king of Incarceration's right-hand man for 300 years. Instead of making his own contracts, Lindman commanded the other demon folk who had contracts with the king. Raizakia had overwhelmingly few subordinates compared to the other dukes. The Black Wizards weren't the only ones who signed contracts with the demon folk due to a desire for power. Demon folk also made contracts with higher-ranking demon folk wishing for the same thing. In other words, there were definitely a lot of demon folk who wanted to work with Raizakia. Soon after the war had come to an end 300 years ago, Raizakia had indeed made new contracts with some demon folk, after a thorough screening process. However, he had never done that since. And who the hell is this? Count Carlid. The guy was a newly rising noble of Helmuth. The man had practically zero presence 300 years ago. Instead, he had gained power in the Age of Peace. Now he was a young ambitious noble who was hoping to join the central forces of Helmuth. Count Carlid's estate was right next to the Dragon Demon Castle. That wasn't much of an issue, but the letter said that he had started to slowly infiltrate the border of the castle this year. I'm certain. The Raizakia in the Dragon Demon Castle isn't the actual Raizakia. It doesn't seem like a clone either. Maybe the imposter was his hatchling. If the hatchling is hundreds of years old, then it all makes sense. Dragons were born powerful, but that wasn't why they were unchallenged. Their overwhelmingly long lifespans contributed to their strength. The older the dragons were, the stronger they became. Raizakia himself made contracts with the demon folk and commanded the dwarves. His hatchling cannot take over the contract, Eugene thought. If Raizakia had died, then the contracts would have been over. The demon folk and the dwarves who were on the other end of the contract would have revolted. The Dragon Demon Castle was intact, however unstable though it was. The contracts remain, so they must be staying loyal to their master's child, but they are reaching their limits. The next paragraph of the letter talked about Barong. As the man himself had told Eugene, he was indeed Jagan's sworn brother. However, there had definitely been no trace of the brotherly love that usually came after the sworn brother's part. In the past, Jagan had sunk his fangs deep into Oberon's neck and killed him. After that he had also killed all the elders who were Oberon's right-hand men, to trigger a change in leadership. Right now, relatively young beast folk from the same generation as Jagan played the key roles. However, Jagan had never shared a close bond with anyone, not even the beast folk in his generation. He simply used supreme power to rule over them. The only beast folk who could stand beside Jagan were the strong ones, the ones who had survived the change. Barong, who was said to be Jagan's sworn brother, was certainly not one of them. Yeah, he was really weak for someone who bragged that much. Eugene reminisced. Eugene had heard from Balzac that the beast folk under Jagan's command worked as mercenaries to become stronger. According to Lovelian's letter, Barong had also been an independent mercenary. He was quite famous in the mercenary industry in Helmuth, having attended dozens of territorial disputes and such. The letter didn't mention whose request had made Barong leave Helmuth, though. At the end of the letter, Lovelian mentioned that he would look into it as best as he could, but Eugene didn't get his hopes up. He too had been a mercenary in his past life. The quests given to the low-class mercenaries were not trustworthy in the slightest. Any involved party could betray the other party at any time. It wasn't even strange if the content of the request got leaked. The same didn't apply to higher-class mercenaries, however. In the beginning, a mercenary's priority was money, obviously, but as time passed, mercenaries would start to feel a sense of honor with respect to their trade. In turn, honor attracted trust. Besides, the amount of payment was no longer the main drive of the high-class mercenaries. What mattered was to get entertaining requests, a trusting relationship with the guild, and so forth. Mercenary guilds are everywhere on the continent, but Helmuth's mercenary guild is special. It was bound to be special. Helmuth's mercenary guild gave out very difficult assignments to its mercenaries. They could get assignments like bodyguarding or defeating enemy forces from any other mercenary guild on the continent, but Helmuth's quests were on another level. On top of that, Helmuth's belligerent demon folk always waged territorial war with each other, making Helmuth a heaven for the mercenaries. So, of course, the content of the request would never get leaked. It doesn't seem like the attacker got the request through the guild either. Assassinating a Lionheart and a saint was not the kind of request that a mercenary guild would arrange. After piling up the letters, Eugene burned them, then stood up. "Are you going today too?" Mare asked as she sat on a comfy sofa licking a candy. A famous pâtissier had put great effort into making this candy for Mare. He was one of the chefs recently hired by the Lionheart's main house. It was candy, but it also resembled ice cream. When Mare licked the candy, she could taste a mouthful of sugar, but its size didn't get any smaller. It looked really soft, but when she tried to chew it, she found that it was crunchy. Mare had definitely taken a liking to it, judging from how she was holding it every time Eugene looked at her. "Lady Ancilla is so overzealous," he muttered. "She is beautiful and kind. She never gave me such candy when I was little. And neither did she hire dozens of cooks for me." "No way. Sir Eugene, are you being jealous of me? I am smaller and cuter than you." "I was small and cute 7 years ago. But you weren't kind like me or on good terms with Lady Ancilla. I heard several stories about your childhood from Lady Ancilla, Sir Eugene. You were truly something even from that age." Mare grinned and hopped down from the sofa. "You beat down Lady Ancilla's son on the first encounter, and also bullied him whenever you could, even after they adopted you, right?" Lady Ancilla exaggerated because it involved her son. "I didn't beat him down, I hit him once. It was a fair and honorable fight. And bullying? I was the one who got bullied. Do you know how much the twins bothered me? I'm not going to trust your word, Sir Eugene. You never give me candy, cookies, and cakes. This is so unfair. Did you already forget how many dessert shops I took you to in Arath? Lady Ancilla took me to more dessert shops than you. Yeah, if you like Lady Ancilla that much, then ask Lady Ancilla to become your mother. Change your name to Mare Lionheart. No, change it to Mare Canes and become her daughter. Don't sulk, Sir Eugene. Aren't you also benefiting from my cuteness?" Mare chuckled and followed Eugene. He couldn't deny that. The chefs hired by Ancilla were all talented, increasing the quality of Eugene's meals significantly. "Mare." As they were heading to the annex, they heard a loud voice. The voice was enough to attract the attention of all servants who were cleaning the first floor. "Where are you going? Do you have to go? If you don't have any plans today, how about we go sightseeing in the city?" It was Gerhard approaching with a big smile. Eugene frowned. You guys went there yesterday. There isn't a law that prohibits a second visit, is it? Weren't you planning to get swordsmanship training from Layman? We postponed it. Layman also liked it when I said I wanted to postpone it. Indeed, Layman was nowhere to be seen. It was obvious where he had gone. Attending the training of the main house's knights, Eugene thought. It was good for Layman to train himself. Eugene didn't consider Layman as his right-hand man, in spite of the latter's hopes and expectations. Still, Eugene thought it was good to have someone loyal to him personally, not the Lionhearts. I have Signard, but he lives in the forest. However, Layman spent his entire day in the annex. If someone attacked the main house, they would go for the annex first, where there were fewer people. When that happened, Layman would be able to easily protect Gerhard and Nina until the knights of the main house arrived. Without playing any political games, he had become the Emir's bodyguard, so he was objectively skilled. He wasn't White Lion Knight captain material, but he would be welcomed in any estate with his skill. More importantly, he wasn't in the least bit satisfied with his level, so he constantly communicated and trained together with the knights of the Lionheart estate. Mare is coming with me today. Eugene denied his father's request. Mare would prefer to tour good restaurants in the city rather than participate in your training. Don't you want to keep your current body? You worked hard to lose that weight. I can lose it quickly if I take medicine. Father. I told you not to eat that medicine, Eugene shouted. Viscount Stellard gave me that himself. How could I refuse his goodwill? Viscount Stellard wouldn't want his gift to be used as diet supplements. He gave it to you so you can diligently exercise and become stronger. You're right. But I don't want to become a muscleman like Viscount Stellard. So don't rely on drugs and just exercise instead. Also, swing a sword a couple of times too. If you keep postponing things like this, I will train you myself. Hearing Eugene's threatening words, Gerhard's face was clouded with despair. He fully knew how strict and ruthless his son was during training. There would be no father and son in that training, only the trainer and the trainee. I also agree with the necessity of training. Sir Gerhard asked me to keep it a secret from you, Sir Eugene, but he recently ordered larger ceremonial clothes. Nina unhesitatingly spoke from behind Gerhard. He quickly turned his head and cleared his throat. I heard it from Nerissa, the kitchen assistant. Sir Gerhard quietly orders late-night snacks every night. One of the main jobs for Lavera is to clean up those dishes. It seems you thought that ordering the apprentice servants will make things unnoticeable, Sir Gerhard. However, your overeating is always reported to me. I treated them so nicely. And this is how they betray me. Everyone is concerned for your health, Sir Gerhard. After hearing Nina, Eugene heaved a sigh and shook his head. Father, come with me and run 10, no 20 laps at least. My knees won't be able to take those laps. Human knees aren't made of glass, but your increasing weight will shatter your knees like glass. They say no more. Come with me right now. Come to think of it, we haven't run together since I was 8 years old, right? I have a reason why I don't run. Gerhard also remembered the moment vividly. He was proud of his little son who strived to train himself, so he once ran in the field with Eugene. They weren't having a match, but Gerhard felt like a total loser at the time. Eugene was an 8-year-old kid, obviously much smaller than him, but he couldn't catch up with Eugene even running at full speed. Even forgetting about his pride as an adult, his pride as a father was irreparably damaged by the fact that he could not outrun his own son. If you run, I will run with you, Sir Gerhard, Mare said with the candy stick in her mouth. She was already done with the candy. My lady, it will ruin your teeth arrangement. Nina quietly approached and took away the candy stick in Mare's mouth. Ever since his wife had died, Gerhard had promised himself to not marry again, but he sometimes wished for the daughter he never had. The memory of running together with his son was filled with misery, so he had been reluctant. However, for some reason he felt like he could make good memories if he ran with Mare. After some pondering, Gerhard nodded. That was how they started running, and that was also how reality ruined Gerhard's expectations for beautiful memories. Eugene didn't hurry, he merely fell into step with Gerhard. Mare also diligently ran beside him. The problem was Gerhard's endurance. Thanks to Viscount Stellard, he had built up quite the stamina, but running in this cold weather made Gerhard tired very quickly. As a familiar, Mare didn't get tired. As for Eugene, let alone 20 laps, even 200 were not enough to make him sweat a little. After finishing his 10th lap, Gerhard collapsed, unable to run any longer. Eugene had been slowly following him, then he stopped beside Gerhard for a moment. Let's increase the distance by 1 lap a day, Eugene said. Instead of answering, Gerhard lay down on the ground and just waved his hand around. Eugene forced Gerhard to stand up and wiped the dirt off of his clothes. He then called Mare. Let's go. Okay, she answered as if she waited for this moment, then she approached Eugene. Lifting his cloak to let Mare enter, he took a couple of deep breaths as he stood still. Lightning flash. Master Eugene is using lightning flash. The servants in the annex talked in whispers. Eugene could see some elves who had a keen sense of hearing covering their ears. He tried his best to stay calm, but he was able to feel the strong desire to kill the White Tower Master Melkith El-Haya, rising from the bottom of his heart. Lightning flash. The name that only existed inside Eugene's head had reached Melkith by accident. On that evening, Melkith had babbled away at the main house's party. The Lionheart family has a really bright future. Did you know about Eugene's new skill, Lady Ancilla? He named it Lightning Flash, and the skill is so cool and brilliant, just like its name. Who could have known that a human could turn into lightning and fly away in a flash? Eugene was very uncomfortable with everyone looking at him. Still, he thought it would be more embarrassing to stop now. When he used the white flame formula, his mana now had the lightning attribute. It had only been a week since he had shown it to Melkith, and he still wasn't able to control the technique properly. But unlike before when he was unable to hit the brakes, he was no longer crashing into trees. He put one foot forward and prepared to spring forth. However, before he had the chance to dash, he had to quickly come to a halt. What? From the forest, his destination, some people were approaching him. When did you arrive here? Carmen Lionheart and Seal Lionheart. The two women who by all accounts should have been in the Black Lion Castle, were coming his way.